Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome live to Brands Hatch for round 10 of the Afterburn Indycar Series, the Main Cup London Endurance Challenge. Doyle, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Well, great day for racing, as always. Perfect temperature, perfect track conditions here at iRacing.
So, Doyle, very quickly, I'm going to allow you to take everyone through the field for this race. Small field, but some pretty impressive times out front.
Yes, sir. They've done a lot with the qualifying and a lot with practicing. So, if we're ready for the field, it looks like qualifying in position number 1 will be Daniel Lee. 38.505 is going to be your pole time today. Position number 2, Karsten Borchers, running at 38.603. Then we have Mark Warmington running at 38.922. Position number 4, UC Neiman, 38.941. Number 69 car, David Ward, 38.979. Position number 6, Jarno Matkin. Oh, can't even say that name. I won't even try it. 39.702. Sorry, Jarno. Position number 7, Randy Crossno. P8, Yves Wanner. Position number 9, Giorgio Ponte. Position number 10, Dave Jinks. Position number 11, Ryan Norton. Rounding out your field today will be Justin Smithson.
And Doyle, unfortunately, you're going to have to bring the field to the green flag, as I currently cannot see anything here, but looks like we're going to have some great racing up and down the field. And this Brands Hatch circuit, very, very quick laps here, and the laps are going to tick down, but real momentum racetrack.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting racetrack. It's interesting you picked this particular configuration for the race today. I don't know if that has anything to do with the turnout on the field, but they're sitting there griding up. Still got a couple of minutes here for finishing our grid. There we go. Pace car's taking off now. Give us one time around there in the teacup handle configuration on Brands Hatch today. It's going to be a lot of quick racing, a lot of action, probably a lot of slower cars being coming up, and the back marker situation is going to be happening a lot today.
And let's not forget, the Champ Car World Series raced on this same track, the same number of laps, back in 2003. That was a great race there, back on Maybank Holiday. We're emulating that today and raising money for MenCap, the charity that deals with learning disabilities. We'll talk to you more about that over the next couple of laps once the field begins this 165 lap race of the Brands Hatch Indianapolis circuit.
Yeah, they're rounding the last 3 corners there. They went around there, right around by the pits. Looks like I'm not real familiar with this configuration, so going around another right-hander. Looks like
so Daniel Lee is going to bring the field up to green flag racing here.
Yep, pace car's in. Looks like we're green, going green.
So round 10 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series, here's green here at Brands Hatch. Cars coming through turn number 1 already.
And Daniel Lee will take an early lead. He's their pole sitter, and he's going to continue to pull away there. He's followed by Karsten Borchers and Mark Warmington. Looks like the field pretty much stayed in line so far. Not a lot passing yet.
And for a race of this distance, Doyle, you'd expect the drivers to kind of get themselves spread out, get a feel to this racetrack, because it's such a long race. These drivers don't want to make too many mistakes early on.
No, and it looks like everybody's going to be real respectful, kind of behaving themselves. Probably want to log as many laps as they can. They've strung out pretty good here. Not a lot of too wide, just one behind the other, trying to let the car settle in. And
yeah, Dave Jinks, sorry, in the number 76 machine, the West USA car, he has dropped that down to the last position. He had a spin, I believe, at the middle of lap number 1. He's got himself some rear wing damage. He's going to have to be very, very careful as he comes through the Graham Hill bend now, down turn 2. But you see a car on the wall there as well. That is John Ailes, our driver of the month from April. He was sat in the 12th position. Turn number 2 here is so difficult. Just because of the fact that if you can see the corner when you start braking, you're going to hit the wall, so you always have to make sure you hit your braking points perfectly.
Well, yeah, and it's too bad for John Ailes, because I don't see him logging any practice laps, so he was obviously late to get out onto the track, so this is going to be his first few laps out here, so he needs to be real careful. I don't know how well that's going to bode for him.
So Daniel Lee is your race leader in the number 1 main cap machine, with Carson Borcher sat in the 2nd position, and then Mark Warmington rounding out your top 3, UC Ninneman in 4th, Jarno Matikainen in 5th, David Ward in 6th, Randy Cosno in 7th, Giorgio Ponti in 8th, Justin Smithson in 9th, and Ryan Norton rounding out your top 10 as we are currently working lap number 4 of 165.
Daniel Lee's obviously one of the sponsors for today's race, working for that charity, and he's proving to be really competitive out here, doing really well on this track.
Yeah, that number one machine, of Daniel Lee, we're looking on him now, doing a great job there. He's only running this race in the Afterburn IndyCar Series, but he's got himself already an 8.5 tenths from the second gap to Carson Borcher in the number 77 machine. He's currently sat in 2nd. Let's not forget, Carson Borcher is no slouch. So that gap in the last lap, he took 5 tenths of a second into the lead there over 2nd. So he's doing a sterling job in that number 1 car. Let's not forget also, this isn't the first race that Daniel Lee's had participation in. He ran the 100 laps of Silverstone earlier this year, which I took part in. He took out hosted the 5 hours of Sebring, all to raise money for MenCap, the charity which deals with learning disabilities, including running the famous London Marathon as well. Just a couple of weeks ago, as you see, Carson Borcher in the number 77 does look as though he can get closer on the end of the lap. Just looks like he's struggling in the first sector.
Yeah, and then Mark Warmington, who's also really strong on this particular track. I think all these guys are a little closer to home on a track like this today, and he promises to be very competitive too, so I think we're just logging some laps here right now. There's quite a bit of a gap there. I think they're just getting comfortable.
Yves Warner had managed to get himself up into the 8th position. He lost himself a couple of positions. Now he's back down into the 10th spot. So he started in the 8th position. He's now down into the 10th spot. So he's the biggest loser so far, really, in this race. The drivers on track in the number 88 Team Afterburn machine. Yves is a pretty good all-round driver. Last year he won the overall and the oval championship, but his road course performances aren't as strong as he is on the ovals at the time. And I think for Yves, he just wants to get himself some solid points here today.
Yeah, he was struggling a little bit in practice, we saw earlier, so I would expect him, as the race goes on, though, to get stronger and stronger, because you know how competitive Yves is.
So the gap between Daniel Lee in the number 1 machine and Carson Borcher in the number 77 is now up to just over 2 seconds, and they come across the line to complete lap number 7 here at Brands Hatch. Mark Warmington, he is now dropped 1.5 seconds behind Carson Borcher. So Carson's in that kind of no man's land at the minute. He's not quite close enough to really challenge Daniel Lee, but he's pulling out a nice little gap over Mark Warmington himself. Usain Unacote sat in the 4th position. He is doing a good job. It looks as though the top 6 drivers, they're all kind of spread out on the racetrack by about a second and a half. So it's going to be a case of whose tyres go off first and who's going to be the first to make a mistake.
Yeah, Daniel Lee's pretty well putting down some blistering laps right now early on in the race, so we'll see if he can keep that pace up as things progress.
Yeah, currently having a look at the number 34 machine of Jarno Matikainen. He is currently sat in the 6th position. He is trying to close down David Ward in the battle for the 5th spot. David Ward running the number 69 Team Afterburn machine. Lap times between these two drivers, Jarno's last lap was a 40.260. David Ward 39.738. So David pulled out a little bit on that last lap. But if you have a look at Jarno's lap times, they have been fairly consistent around the kind of high 39s, low 40 ranges. For David Ward, however, his lap times have been about a tenth and a half quicker, and it looks like he's starting to close down Houston Zimmerman ever so slightly in that battle for the 4th position.
Yeah, and David Ward, we've seen before, he's kind of new to this series, and he was definitely new to oval, but not to road. And we're, David Ward is always a competitor, so I think as he dials his car right in here and gets used to the track a little better, I think we're going to see him charging up to the front.
Yves Warner in the number 88 machine, getting oh so close to the rear of Justin Smithson in the number 5 machine as they come through Paddock Hill Bend, so Graham Hill Bend. And it looks like Yves Warner really is closing now. He's just got to find himself an ideal opportunity. The second part of the lap pretty much is single file, unless he can get a very good run off this corner, which he's trying to do now. Two wides to come into the S, and it looks like Yves is going to try and make the move around the outside. Oh, so close to collecting each other, but Yves Warner moves himself up into the 9th position.
That was a really gutsy move, and it looks to like Yves also has a little bit of left front wing damage there. It's a little dented, so that may be affecting his handling just a little bit in the tighter bits of the track.
So your race leader is still Daniel Lee in the number 1 machine. The gap between himself and Carsten Borches is up to 2.2 seconds. And having a look at Yves Warner, I remember he had just a little bit of an incident at the start of this race as he was trying to get himself a nice jump early in the field. That's going to affect his handling a little bit. I mean, having a look at his lap time to 41.1 last time by, really is pretty off the pace. You see Justin Smith from there trying off the track. He's spinning it around, and he's going to be able to get himself back on the racetrack, but he's going to go down a lap quite early, having to let cars go past him. I've seen that Ryan Norton, he's going to go a lap down to Daniel Lee. So Daniel Lee is charging his way through the field. And with these short laps, there is a chance that the leaders are going to have to slide their way through traffic quite a bit in the middle stage of this race.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the more exciting things we're going to see as the race goes on, because of the diversity and speeds in the field. I think we're going to see the leaders in lap traffic a lot. So as the race goes on, I don't think you're going to see as much clean air racing, which should make quite exciting.
Currently having a look at Carsten Borches, he's looking to try and put a lap on Ryan Norton as well as they come out of the final corner. It looks like Borches got himself a nice run. Ryan Norton getting himself off the throttle again just to let him pass. And now Dave Jinks, let's not forget, he is trying to get himself back into contention after his early woes at the start of this race. He is now going to try and get a lap back from Ryan Norton in that number 84 machine as Dave Jinks goes wide into Druids there. Just losing it a little bit, and that's going to cost him a couple of seconds there.
Yeah, Ryan Norton also seems to have the similar same left front wing damage that we saw on Yves Warner, so that may be affecting his lap times at this point.
Oh, gap between Carsten Borches and Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee is now gaining himself over 3-second advantage over Carsten Borches. Mark Warmington, he's currently sat in the 3rd position. It's Daniel Lee already into pit lane for his first pit stop. He's going to relinquish the race lead there at the end of lap number 14. So you are going to have yourself a new race leader in the form of Carsten Borches. And was Daniel Lee just trying to get himself a nice easy cushion early on in this race? As he's come back out almost immediately there, I'm not quite sure what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Well, and you see too, what we've been watching is Lucy Nieman's been closing the gap on Mark Warmington here at a pretty rapid pace. He's really putting the charge on. So that's interesting. I was expecting Mark Warmington to pull out a lot earlier than he has. So, of course, he's kind of a strategic racer as well. So we'll see if UC can get by Mark.
So yeah, UC Nieman now up into the 3rd position. Mark Warmington up into 2nd. But UC Nieman getting a little bit squirrely to come through Paddock Hill Bend, turn number 1, then down into Druids, that long right hander then before they bring it here to the left for Graham Hill Bend. UC Nieman, it looks like he is a bit better at the start of this lap. However, he did get himself a little bit out of shape in turn number 1 this time by, which has dropped him back by about 1/10.5 from Mark Warmington in that battle for the 2nd position. So UC Nieman, I think he's just going to, play it safe for a minute. A lot of the hard charges that we often see on the road courses, unfortunately, aren't here today, and that not only is going to create a different style of racing from what we're sometimes used to in the afternoon Indycar series. You see a car off track, I believe that could be Ryan Norton, as they're coming around, and he's off track again as he's trying to bring it round turn number 2. UC Nieman having to get off the throttle a little bit. That is going to give Mark Warmington a little bit more breathing space in that number 17 blue flag racing machine. But Doyle, coming back to you there, it's going to be a different type of race today. It's all about mental endurance, about dealing with how the car is going to behave over the long run, and just making sure you don't make any mistakes, because although there are runoffs here, the tyre barriers and the walls are oh so close.
Yes, they are, and you see a lot of the drivers, even in practice and qualifying, they're using the entire track, and unfortunately, there's a lot of kitty litter on the outside there, and the cars have been using that as well. I think you're definitely correct on the long race, because you got 165 laps here. I think the car's going to handle completely differently under low fuel conditions. So, you know, that's something that everybody's going to have to pay attention to whether their car gets loose or tight, or, you know, as the run goes on.
Going back to Daniel Lee, he is currently sat in the 6th position, just putting another lap on Justin Smithson in the number 5 machine as he was working through turns number 5, 6 and 7. I think so for Daniel Lee, he's got by far the fastest car on the racetrack. For him now, it's a case of racing himself against the clock to try and get himself back into contention after an early pit stop on lap 14. I'm intrigued to know exactly what his strategy is in that number 1 car, because it didn't look as though he was in pit lane for too long.
No, it may have been just a situation where he forgot to take race fuel at the beginning of the race. And he may have just had a short pit there, get a little fuel, and get back out on the track. That may be why he had such a commanding lead at the beginning of the races. He may have been running qualifying fuel.
Carson Borges in the number 77 machine. The gap between himself in 1st position and Mark Wilmington, 11.6 seconds. The gap between Mark Wilmington and UC Newham, however, that is less than half a second. As you see them on screen now, UC Newham in the number 82 machine is closing on Mark Wilmington. And let's not forget, David Ward, he is only 1.5 seconds behind in the number 69 pink car. So, in the event that Mark Wilmington and UC Newham start fighting for position, this could allow David Ward to catch up to these 2 drivers.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a motivating factor for David Ward, because he can now see those cars in front of him, so he's going to have the hammer down. David Ward has proved to be a very competitive driver, so see, look, he's closing that gap at an amazing pace, so we're going to see whether he can get by UC and put the attack on Mark.
Point of note, Dave Jinks in the number 76 machine, limping his way back to pit lane after losing it on the exit of turn number 1. It looks as though he just hit a little bump there as he came off the apex of the corner. Didn't unwind the steering wheel quick enough. He's got himself some wing damage, a little bit of suspension damage. He is struggling to bring that car down into pit lane as cars are going all the way past him. But he's now down into pit lane itself. Speed limit here, very, very paltry pace, and he is now going to try and get some repairs to his race car.
Yeah, that's too bad for David Jinks. He's not having a lot of luck early on in this race today, and that's unfortunate.
So we still have 8 drivers on the lead lap. Randy Crosno currently sat in the 8th position. Solid performance at the moment from Randy Crosno in that number 4 Aero-X racing machine. He's not the biggest fan of the road courses, but he really has. See a car, lots and lots of gravel smoke ahead of him. That is Justin Smithson in the number 5 machine. He's having a difficult day. For Randy Crosno, I think that, you know, he really is improving on the road time week by week, like we see.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just later in the race before he joins us in the booth each week. So, well, hopefully this week we'll have a good race, and we won't see him until the end of the race.
Daniel Lee, the first driver to get into the 38th second. Unfortunately, after that, he was set himself a 40.1 just last time by. But he's the first driver to get into 38 in this race. The only driver to do so first so far. His fastest lap of 38.893. He is really charging his way back to the field. The gap between himself in 6th position and the leader, Carson Borges, that is now down to less than 22.5 seconds. And to come across the line, he took himself another 0.3 of a second that last lap.
Yeah, and you've really got something heating up here. It looks like David Ward is really putting the pressure on UC Newham up here. He's, you know, I don't know how much he's willing to press, but it definitely looks like David Ward has, you know, everything he needs to press these 2nd and 3rd place cars.
So the pink making it a three-way there in the number 69 machine. Battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th position on the racetrack. Mark Wilmington sat in 2nd. He has got UC Newham oh so close behind him. The gap this time by is less than 1 second. I tell you what, UC Newham was literally side by side last lap. Didn't manage to get the job done. David Ward in the 69 car has really caught up to these drivers now as they are coming through Druids, turn number 2. And I think David Ward is just waiting for his moments to pounce, because he knows this track very well. He races here in real life. He races here also in many other series, the Talk Freak Racing series, for example, the Super Cup. So he knows his track very, very well. And as we're looking now at Daniel Lee, he's trying to get his way back through the field. He's trying to pass, work on Jana Matikainen. But for David Ward, I think his experience can really help him in the latter stages of this race.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's just biding his time at this point, because if you look up, looks like Daniel Lee almost trying to make a pass on Jarno. You've got David Ward's got a lot of experience there, so I think he's going to be. I think he's just biding his time, because he's definitely faster into the corners than UC Neiman is.
Yeah, Daniel Lee looks like he's lost himself a couple of attempts behind Jana Matikainen as they come through the Graham Hill bend. He's not really going to try and ease one of that. He doesn't. Protecting his car just a little bit. He's got a car of Justin Smith's, and they're going to go a lap. He's going to go a lap down at any time now. As Mark Warmington, he pulls himself into his lane. Justin Smithson pulls himself around his pit lane. Mark Warmington at the end of lap number 26. He's the first driver of this lead group to come down pit lane. I believe he might have got himself a little bit of damage. He just collected the ball a little bit. Meanwhile, having a look at Daniel Lee, and he has indeed managed to get himself now past Jana Matikainen in the number 34 machine.
Yeah, he just blew by him to start finish line. He was just waiting for the opportunity, and he got right by Jarno on that last lap around. So definitely we're going to have what I think is going to be a great battle, which will be Daniel Lee versus David Ward. I think is going to be your next major card on the fight plan here.
Yeah, and I think that although Daniel Lee's much faster, I think that he could be the driver who can find a way to hold Daniel Lee off, as he knows this racetrack so well, knows all the defensive line. As UC Nimmerman, having a look at him, I believe he has come down to make his first pit stop as well. No, sorry, he lost himself 10 seconds on that last lap.
Oh, he's been damaged somehow.
Yeah, he's got some real
kind of altercation.
Into Druids.
Trash.
Into Druids. Just clipping the wall into Druids, having to reverse the car out. Got himself a little bit of wing damage there. So it looks so maybe the stress of this race is starting to take its toll just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to escape. They'll be lucky if anybody escapes getting some kind of damage or off the track, or because there's a lot of laps left. We're only on lap 29 of 165, even though they're ticking off at a remarkable pace, 40 seconds a lap. There's a lot going on this racetrack, and you're constantly encountering traffic. So that's not normally what happens on these road courses. You get a lot of time to yourself, and on this track that's not going to be the case.
So we're currently looking, working lap number 30 here of 165 here at the London Main Cap Endurance Challenge on Glacier TV. Will Vincent Doyle Johnson in the booth, and Carsten Borch's gap now between himself and David Ward is 18 seconds. But look who's there in the third position, closing David Ward down at a rapid rate of knots. It's none other than the number 1 car of Daniel Lee.
Daniel Lee is running a phenomenal race. Lap times 39.049. Yeah, he's definitely putting the pressure on David Ward, who is a great racer in his own right and is extremely fast. So it's not David versus Goliath. It's Goliath versus Goliath right here.
I like that one. And a little bit topical as well. Let's not forget this race is presented by MenCap. MenCap, the charity, which is the voice for those with learning disabilities. You can find out more at mencap.org.uk. Find out all the great work they do. Also, if you'd like to donate to MenCap this race, we are trying to raise as much money as possible for MenCap here today, as you can see by Daniel Lee in the number 1 machine. He's done a great job raising over £1,600 for MenCap. Through a lot of sim racing and also running the London Marathon, and he is really putting the pressure now onto David Ward in the number 69 pink machine.
Yeah, and I think their favorite place to pass is going to be right there at that start-finish line. But yeah, he's coming right up on the rear wing. He's knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, David, here I am." So we're going to see how much longer David can hold him off.
David Ward taking a little bit of defensive line as they came through the Graham Hill bend there. And this section of the racetrack pretty much is single file, unless you can really line yourself up. As you see there, David Ward going wide, Daniel Lee underneath him. That's disappointing in some ways because we were looking for a great battle between those two. David Ward cracks just a little bit. That gives Daniel Lee the position, and now he's going to try and hunt down Carsten Borchers.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like David Ward cracked under the pressure of having somebody on his back wing there. So that I was hoping the battle would go on a lot longer than that, but that's racing.
So Mark Warmington, after his pit stop, he's been relegated down to the 5th position, going through the field momentarily. Carsten Borchers, he is your race leader in the number 77 machine. The gap between himself and Daniel Lee, currently sat in the 2nd position, is 19.4 seconds as they come across the line to complete lap number 33. In the 3rd position, David Ward, he is a further 2 seconds behind Daniel Lee in the number 1 car, and then UC Nimmerman, he had a little bit of an off-track excursion earlier on in the number 82 machine. He is now down into the 4th position, and Mark Warmington, as he talked about just a moment ago, he is in 5th with Giorgio Ponti in the 00 Santa Maria TNT machine. He is currently in the 6th position. Randy Cosner in 7th, Fiona Matakea in 8th, he's won it in 9th, and Dave Jinks running out your top 10.
Yeah, a lot of these cars, there's only 4 cars currently on the lead lap, and normally that might be cause for alarm, but on a short track like this, on a road course, by the end of the race, the leader might possibly be the only car on the lead lap. But, Will, I've got a question for you, a little bit of a challenge. There's 19.39 seconds difference between Daniel Lee and Carsten Borchers for the lead of this race. What lap do you think it'll be when Daniel Lee actually pulls Carsten Borchers into his sights?
When Carsten Borchers comes down into pit lane. Simple as that.
That was not the exciting answer I was looking for, sir.
Well, the gap between those two drivers last time by, Daniel Lee with 39.586, Carsten Borchers 39.215. But Daniel Lee's having to negotiate himself around some traffic. Last time by, he did a 39.1, so he managed to eke a 10th out of that lead. So at that rate, he's not going to be able to do it. But let's not forget, we've got pit stops here. We have the fact that we still have ourselves a good 130 laps to go. So for these drivers, it is a case of pedal to the metal, and I think Carsten Borchers is just trying to manage that gap for the moment.
Yeah, and this actually has to be kind of exciting for Carsten Borchers because he hasn't, in this series, had a whole lot of opportunities to lead the race and actually be the dominant driver. You know, of course, Daniel Lee was at the start. Now, Carsten Borchers had managed to take the lead and hasn't looked back since. So he's got to be feeling pretty good about his race right now. Let's
not forget, however, that Carsten Borchers has had some very solid performances on both road and oval. And I think that for Carsten Borchers, this is an opportunity for him to really establish himself in the Afternoon Indycar series with some very good finishes as we come back to the road courses for the next couple of weeks. We're here this week, we're going to Alton Park next week for a driver like Borchers, who's currently, you know, he's currently sat 22nd in the points, but on the road side, he's quite a bit further up, currently sat in the 6th position. I think that he really, really wants to get himself a good points haul here today.
Yeah, and we've had, you know, Carsten Borchers has come up multiple times on his road courses, coming in and out. So I just think he's having a good race, and like I say, you know, his pit crew and his team ought to be pretty happy with him right now, trying to log as many laps as he can.
So Carsten Borchers is currently still your race leader in the number 77 machine. Daniel Lee currently sat in the 2nd position, David Ward in 3rd, GC Nimmerman in 4th, and Mark Warmington rounding out your top 5. And I think that David Ward, he's dropped back 10 seconds. Is he just trying to pace himself at the moment?
I don't know that he has. He just had some words for another driver on the track there. So, and again, he may be just trying to pace himself, but something happened a little while ago. I didn't quite catch it, so looks like he's off a little bit, but he'll get it back together and he'll be running up there.
And he's
to get
just
himself around.
Yeah, so Doyle, for when this last traffic, just explain how difficult it is for these drivers to negotiate lap traffic, because this is kind of getting to over racing, the fact that you have to do it so often.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's not. Oh, whoa! It looks like he got by Justin there. Justin got off the track a little bit, but yeah, that's like I say for road racing. That's not normally what you see on the longer tracks. As you break loose, the pack thins out, and you can run with maybe one or two cars for quite a few laps. But you can also spend a lot of time out there on your own. And in this track here, it's constant lap traffic, which is definitely making for a more exciting race. I wish more of them would be like this, because it's not only good for the spectators, but it's also good for the racers, because it's going to be a lot harder to break away, like, keep that lead up.
Justin Smithson has been waved off the track in the number 5 machine. It's been a difficult day for Smithson in that number 5 car. He's really been trying to get himself some momentum, but it just hasn't come to him. And I think that at a track this short, it comes back to what you were just saying, Doyle. I think the key word today is momentum. And in a situation like this, I think that for Smithson, it's just a case of every time you lose that momentum, you've got to try and build it back up. And having to be lapped as often as he has, it wasn't doing himself any favours, and it was also kind of difficult for some of the other drivers as you try and get yourself back into that rhythm. It was almost becoming a little bit too unpredictable.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you have to have some kind of pace here. But, I mean, the leaders are probably being less affected by it as the people in the middle of the pack, because it's absolutely a constant race with people that you're not actually racing against. So, but again, that makes it kind of a challenge, and one of the reasons why I'm glad you picked this kind of teacup handle configuration. It's short and fast. It's kind of a combo between road racing and oval.
Don't forget that you can win $15 iRacing today if you can answer a very simple question. I think we've mentioned it already. Where will the next round 11 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series, be taking place next week? You can find the answer out on teamafterburn.com. If you're on Twitter, use the hashtag AfterburnMenCap, all one word, and you could win yourself $15 iRacing. And let's not forget, Doyle, one lucky driver in this race today, he's also going to win himself $15 iRacing.
And how's he going to do that?
By taking a green flag.
Well, there you go.
Job done. Carson Borchers, the gap between himself and Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee in clean air can definitely close up to Carson Borchers, but this lap traffic, where you catch the traffic, is always a difficult bit, as he puts a lap on Jana Matikainen. And Daniel Lee, he can definitely close when it's just tete-a-tete, but Carson Borchers just seems to be a little bit luckier through traffic at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm going through the field here, and I'm seeing quite a few damaged race cars. You see Neiman probably needs to pit and get that wing fixed. Actually, he's got wing damage in the front and the rear, so he's not running the same pace that he used to run. So I think he's just waiting for that opportunity to pit so he can get his car, get that crew chief back on his car and get that thing fixed.
Yeah, we're currently working lap 46 of 165, looking at the battle for 4th position on the racetrack between UC Nimmerman and Mark Cormington. Both drivers having issues early on, and there you see Mark Cormington overtaking UC Nimmerman into Druid. Great pass there, and I think that, as you were saying, with UC having a little bit of damage to his race car, he just let Mark Cormington go ahead, and maybe he's going to see with the draft whether or not Mark can just put him around the racetrack, get himself back into some form of contention as he tries to ride around until his pit stop.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't already pitted to take care of that damage, because he's definitely just putting himself further and further behind. Of course, there's a lot of race left, but he was running so well earlier on until he got that damage.
To run through the rest of your field, Jana Matikainen, he is currently sat in the 6th position in the number 34 Glacier Racing Machine. He's doing himself a nice solid job. His last couple of laps, still, he's been anywhere from the 39.5 range. He set his fastest lap just 2 laps ago to the kind of low 40-second lap. So he's doing himself a good job there, currently sat in the 6th position with, I know he has some very little practice time coming into this race, but a good 6th position for him at the moment. Giorgio Ponti, he's currently sat in the 7th position. He's also one lap down in the 00 Sanisbria TNT racing machine. Giorgio Ponte is a driver that we don't often talk about, but again, he's one of those drivers that always gets himself some solid finishes. And although his fastest lap's only a 40.0, he's holding his own there in the 7th spot.
Yeah, and Giorgio Ponte has been, a regular in these races, like you said, very consistent. Not necessarily the fastest driver, but his patience on race course ends up getting him some fairly strong finishes because probably just because he's not so aggressive. It looks like Yves Lander has given up and pulled into the pits there and maybe out of his race car.
Yeah, so 2 disappointing races in a row for Yves Lander. Last time out, we had a great fun watching Yves Lander, but he had a difficult day at Pocono. Difficult day for him again. And for Yves, that's going to be something that he's not going to be very happy with, as he really wanted to use this kind of middle part of the season to build back that momentum, to get himself into contention, to retain his championship. But the 9th place finish, he's going to get himself a couple of points, but not the kind of finish he would have wanted.
No, and that's a big disappointment for Yves. And while that's going on, UC Neiman contacted the tire bearers, went off the track yet again. But he's not pulling into the pits, and it's really a surprise that he's not getting the damage to his race car fixed.
Randy Croslow, we haven't talked about him much, mainly because of the fact he's down on the racetrack for once and not up here.
Well, we'll try not to give him the curse of the announcer.
In the number 4 car, he is slightly off the pace. His last lap, 41.075, as he comes across the stripe again to see how he's doing. Slower lap that time, 42.0. I think he's having himself a little bit of tyre issues, because having a look at his apex through turn number 1, where you really need the mechanical grip, just having to tiptoe through that at the moment. But Randy Croslow currently sat in the 8th position, doing a good job out there, and while others are falling around him, he is holding on to a solid 8th spot.
Yeah, and I think Randy right now, he's just trying to finish the race, because he knows that we'll give him a whole bunch of crap if he has to come back in this booth again today. So he's just trying to stay on the race course and finish the race. And he's improved so much since the beginning of the season. So I think he's just trying to relax and get himself around that race course, because we've seen this in the past. You don't have to have such a great start. It really is, pardon the puns, and where you finish. But, if the people in front of him are crashing into the walls all the time, next thing you know, he's in 4th position, and he's a happy camper.
I have to send out my apologies to everyone who's watching this race on teamafterburn.com for the lack of the shiny text updates which was promised. Had a couple of issues with not only our software but our manpower coming into this race, so we're going to try and get that up for you as this race progresses. The gap between Daniel Lee and Carson Borchers, last lap, Daniel Lee, that
something's happened there.
Yeah, so Daniel Lee, let's have a look at his across the line this time, back to 39.1s, but good ding-dong battle going on between Carson Borchers and Daniel Lee, but Carson Borchers definitely holding his own at the moment.
Oh yeah, he's not looking back at this point in time, which is kind of interesting, because you saw Daniel Lee when he was leading the race. Carson Borchers was not able to keep up with him, and now we're seeing kind of the same thing. I think it's just the lap traffic that's really affecting everybody's ability to charge forward in the race, and I think that's
Daniel Lee into pit lane. At the end of lap number 53, Daniel Lee is coming down into pit lane to make his his second stop of the race. Having a look at Carson Borchers, as we are kind of in that fuel window now to see whether he's going to come down pit lane this time by. He's very slow through the penultimate corner. Is he going to make that turn down pit lane? No, he doesn't, not this time by. Daniel Lee, in the meantime, he is now getting himself 4 fresh tyres and getting himself some Sunoco race gas, coming out of pit lane with that first mix box. You've got to be oh so careful you just don't run into that metal barrier on the right hand side. Rejoining the racetrack behind David Ward, so he's going to give up that second position for the moment. Carson Borchers, however, he's still your race leader. We're going to keep an eye on him and see when he decides to come down pit lane.
He's running some really good lap times.
Yeah, his fastest lap.
39.0 there for a while. So
yeah, 39.057 is his fastest lap, which is set on lap 53. So he's definitely coming towards the end of his fuel window. as we're keeping an eye out on him. He goes by us one more time as we're going to be showing 55 laps complete in the Mencap London Endurance Challenge here on Glacier TV, presented by Mencap, the voice for learning disability. Wolverhampton, Doyle Johnson in the booth, and I think that Carsten Borchers really has got a shot of walking away with this race at present.
Well, it appears so from what we're seeing right now. He's running great lap times. He's managed to keep out in front. He's currently the only car on the lead lap. Of course, he's going to have to pit here within the next couple of laps, I'm sure. So it's kind of interesting on his strategy as far as pitting is concerned. As he goes by pit lane once again, and Daniel Lee's on like a multiple pit strategy. He seems to be pitting, what, every 15 laps?
Yeah, Daniel Lee's had 2 pit stops. I've got a feeling the first one he might have come down pit lane to replace the front wing or something. We'll have a look back later on in this race, and we'll try and find one of our typical Wizzo and Gizmo persons to have a look at that as well. But Carsten Borchers, his last lap of 39.431. Let's have a look back to Daniel Lee to exactly how. But first, oh, sorry, David Ward, Daniel Lee, just as we flick over to them, crashing on the racetrack as, again, just coming off of Graham Hill Bend. I think that David Ward just got himself a little bit loose over the curbs, didn't realise that Daniel Lee's alongside them. Both those cars are limping back to pit lane. As you see Daniel Lee, he's coming down pit lane once again. David Ward, he is down in pit lane. Carsten Borchers down in pit lane. But Carsten Borchers now is going to be with a substantial lead in this race.
Oh, that was a massive, that was an epic fail on the part of Daniel Lee and David Ward. But Daniel Lee very, very aggressive on trying to pass in those corners. David Ward probably, like you said, was not quite aware that he was there, and he managed to hold on for 2 corners, and then, there's no way that he understood that he was underneath him right there. I was just kind of watching that, and yeah, David Ward down into Daniel Lee in the corner there, so I'm sure they'll exchange a few words and be back on the track.
And let's not forget that just about the track where the incident happened is where the drivers like to run a little bit wide onto that extended curbing. And I've got a big feeling that David Ward just wasn't aware of the fact that he was there. So I think that Daniel Lee's now got himself a speeding penalty or black flag penalty. So he's having to come down pit lane once again. This is really going to hurt his race chances. David Ward, he is sat in pit lane as well. Carsten Borchers isn't only your race leader now, he is going to be your race leader by a sizable margin. And guess who's coming out 1 and 2 out of pit lane?
Oh! Uh-oh. A little bad blood there, you think, Will?
I really do not want to be listening to the words coming up between these 2 drivers. They come into
Wow.
Druid. Daniel Lee getting past that time. Has he got himself a little bit of front wing damage in that exchange, however? Having a look on his car, looks like it's fine.
No, it looks like David Ward just went ahead and let him by, because that was quite an aggressive move there by Daniel Lee.
Meanwhile, get your trumpets out. The number 77 Lurpak machine of Carsten Borchers, your race leader. Second position, Mark Warmington, 28 seconds behind the race lead. Only 2 drivers currently on the lead lap. But Carsten Borchers now, all he has to do is keep it together for the next 105 laps of this race. And we know that's easier said than done. But Carsten Borchers really, really in the hot seat now.
Yeah, it's, as we talked about earlier, look at Mark Warmington. We haven't been talking about him through this, the last 20 laps of the race, and next thing you know, he's 27 seconds behind the leader, but the only other car on the lead lap. Now, in your second position, Jarno Markkinen in third position, and Giorgio Ponte, remember we talked about him earlier, just steady, is now your 4th place driver.
So yeah, Jarno Markkinen in the number 34 Glacier Racing Machine. He is sat now in the 3rd position. Can Jarno get himself a podium in his first race in the Afterburn Indycar Series? Doing a stunning job currently in that Glacier Racing Machine. And I think for Jarno, it is game on time, because he's got the opportunity to try and close down Mark Warmington. His last lap of 39.854 as Giorgio Ponte is about to come down pit lane. Having looked at Mark Warmington's last lap, 39.645. Not much between these 2 drivers. It's going to come down to that one word I've been talking about all day long. Momentum.
Well, yeah, and I'm kind of right along with Daniel Lee here. He's ticking off 39.2s, 39.1s in lap traffic. He's definitely in the chase. He's charging as hard as he can. He's kind of, it's interesting how aggressive this driver is.
I think it's a man on a mission after having issues early on, having to come down pit lane about 15 laps into this race. Giorgio Ponti, as he's coming out of pit lane in the 00 Santa Sprilla TNT racing machine. I think that Daniel Lee now is just trying to get himself the best he can out of this race. Currently sat in the 4th position. The driver ahead of him is Jarno Matikayan in the number 34 machine. And I've got a feeling that Daniel Lee is just going to try. That is Jarno Matikayan, and I say that's Dave Jinks even. Dave Jinks in the number 76, just getting a little bit off track there as they come through grids, allowing Daniel Lee to just drive past him. Jarno Matikayan is a good, however, 20 seconds up the road from Daniel Lee, but he's lapping about 3/10 of a lap, normally slower.
Yeah, and he just ran a 38.9, so like you said, Daniel Lee, man on a mission, really aggressive with the throttle pedal.
So, with 64 laps shown complete at the line, Carsten Borchers in the number 77 machine is your race leader. Mark Warmington in the number 17 Blue Flag racing car. He is sat in the 2nd position with Jarno Matikayan in the Glacier Racing number 34 machine in 3rd. Daniel Lee in the number 1 Mencat machine on 4th, and Giorgio Ponti running out your top 5. Having a look at the moment at Giorgio Ponti in that 00 machine, and he's doing himself a nice solid job. He's now up into the 5th position. Good drive so far by Giorgio Ponti in that 00 machine. Points to note, David Ward, he is currently scored in the 8th spot, 2 laps down. He is going to see if he can get himself back up a couple of position. He has the opportunity to pick off Randy Krosno. He's currently sat in the 7th position. The gap between those two drivers is about 10 seconds. As Daniel Lee's now putting a lap on Randy Krosno at the moment. Just done it there, coming out of the final corner. So yeah, the gap between them, about 10 seconds as they come across the line. So that's going to be David Ward's next target. You see minimum the gap between himself and Randy Krosno. That is about 15 seconds. But Yusi Nimmerman, Giorgio Ponti, that is your battle on the racetrack at the moment for the 5th and 6th position. And I'll tell you what, Yusi Nimmerman is getting oh so close as they come into the final corner. GC just locking up the race a little bit, had to be very careful not to run into the back of Giorgio Ponti in that 00 machine as they come down across the line. Last time by, Yusi Nimmerman a 40.362. Giorgio Ponti, he was a little bit faster that last lap, but normally he's doing 40.6s. Giorgio Ponti just picking up the pace there.
Well, and that's the thing, is I still have to question the judgment of Houston Ian to stay out on the track with that damaged race car for so long and put himself into 2 laps down. And now he's back in the race. He's pitted. His pit crew has managed to get the damage out of his race car, and now he's back up in the hunt and in the race. But it's kind of was it too long? Did he wait too long for that and kind of put himself out of contention?
Well, I think that he had to kind of keep it as it was, just because of the fact he would probably lose a little bit more time if he came into pit lane. Let's not forget, on such a short racetrack, you can lose yourself quite a bit of time coming down into pit lane. It's a very slow pit lane speed limit, and I think that he personally made the right call by just nursing his car around. Yes, he's currently scored in the 6th position. Yes, he's currently scored 2 laps down. However, I think he would have lost more if he had come down pit lane. I tell you what, so close as they go. Yusi, he's going to get a good drive off this final corner. Will it be able to look down to the inside? Giorgio Ponti, he is just covering himself on the racetrack for the moment as they come down into Paddock Hill Bend. As they are working lap 67, the race leaders are 2 laps ahead of them. I think that Giorgio Ponti's doing a good job defending this at the moment.
Well, absolutely. Getting a little squirrely coming off that corner, but he's managed to make that race car about 3 or 4 lanes wide there in a few positions. So he's doing a really good job of holding up Houston Nealon. But Houston's going to get by him there. If looks like Giorgio's feeling the pressure there.
Yeah, a little wiggle again as they come in to the S's. I think Nimmerman just needs to line him up. Very, very difficult to overtake into turn number 1. as they come across the line again. And I think that UC not only is trying to put pressure on Giorgio Ponti continuing, he's not going to try down the inside here, not quite going to be close enough. But at the same time, UC doesn't want to push too hard because he could end up on the wall himself. And especially into Druids, as I said earlier, if you can see the breaking point where you start braking, you're going to be in the wall.
Yeah, and UC's already been introduced to the wall a couple times today, so he's well aware of trying to be cautious for sure. And once again, Giorgio Ponte kind of getting a little loose there in that corner.
But he had issues trying to put the power down. That cost him the opportunity to really make the pass happen. As they were side by side, coming down the front straight away, shooting him and thought better of it. And there's Giorgio Ponte, he goes wide. This is going to be a drag race down into Druids. Justin Rene gets the job done.
Yeah, just, as we said, looks like Giorgio Ponte was feeling a little bit of pressure there. He wasn't as comfortable on his line. He was kind of making a few mistakes, and UC Niemann was able to capitalize.
So that moves UC Niemann up into the 5th position, moves Giorgio Ponte down into the 6th spot. And let's have a look back to David Ward to see where he is. He's got himself around Randy Crosno. He is now trying to close down these two drivers, but the gap between them is about 18 seconds on the racetrack. Daniel Lee, let's go back to him for the moment. He is currently scored in the 4th position in the number 1 main cap machine as he is working lap number 71 at the moment. He is 1 lap down from Carsten Borchage, your race leader. The gap between himself and Jarno Matikainen, that is not as big as it was earlier on. It's down to about 10 seconds. And Jarno, his last lap was a 40.430. Daniel Lee's last lap, 39.2.
And you see now I've got the pronunciation Matikainen, so Jarno Matikainen trying to, he's probably real happy with himself right now because he started, further back in the pack. And as we talked about, even though you're a lap down, it doesn't matter. Right now he's sitting on the podium, so he's going to be running his, his best race as he possibly can to try to keep Daniel Lee off of his rear wing. But I think it's just a matter of time, and we do have another pit sequence coming up.
And all the confusion during that round of pit stops and everything that happened, look who's moved himself up back into the 2nd position. None other than Mark Warmington in the number 17 Blue Flag Racing machine. I still question why it's a Blue Flag Racing car in red, but we'll ask him that one later on. But Mark Warmington, yes, he's 37 seconds behind the race lead. Yes, he could end up going down a lap in the next 4 or 5 laps or so, but sterling drive by that number 17 car.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Warmington usually very strong on the road courses. Again, I think he can pretty much take a break in the pits and go home for lunch here. But I think being familiar with the track and being comfortable with the car. But as we talked about again, it's not always the most aggressive racer. So Mark Warmington working his way up, being very steady, very smooth on the track, and he's enjoying that 2nd position right now.
Yeah, Mark Warmington doing a very, very good job in that 2nd position. After having incidents earlier on, it does seem to be a case of not only the M word, which I've been talking about all race long, but one other thing as well, and that is making the most of the opportunities presented to you. And Mark Warmington's been able to bounce back from what was a difficult portion of the race, about 35 laps in, to get himself back into that 2nd position. And just having a look now at your race leader, Carsten Borchage, he is going to be shown with 75 laps complete at the line, going to get himself around Randy Crosno as he comes down into Paddock Hill Bend, down the Haywood Hill, into Druids, turn number 2, gets himself around Randy Crosno there. He can see Mark Warmington as he comes out of that corner down into Graham Hill Bend, turn number 3. Closing as they come down the Cooper straightaway into Surtees, turn number 4, and then it's that long, fast left-hand flick through McLaren into Clearway. Clearway is such a difficult corner, it just falls away at the end. You can't put the power down when you want to. Coming out of there, back down through Clark Corner to complete yet another lap. Carsten Borchage really is on the move.
Absolutely. I think this is the best we've ever seen him drive. I mean, he's always been a good driver, good solid driver, but man, he's really a man on a mission today. He's being really aggressive and the whole time out there and putting down some really good lap times.
Daniel Lee's closing himself down. He's overtaken just there. Jarno Matikainen coming out of turn number 1. A beautiful manoeuvre. He just got such a good run off the corner as Jarno moved down. He just caught a bump on the exit of the corner. Daniel Lee getting himself around, move him back up into the 3rd position. Jarno Metakainen down into 4th.
And Carson Butcher's managed to, it looks like Carson managed to get around.
Yeah, he's around Mark Warmington, so he now has a gap of 40 seconds. You can also call it 1 lap of this Brands Hatch circuit. Current dominance by Carson Borchers in the number 77 machine. Let's not forget, Carson Borchers has himself a new sponsor for this week, that number 77 Lurpak machine, doing himself a great job out front, and I think he will be pleased with his performance, even if it was to end now. He's currently shown with 78 laps scored complete. So we're pretty much approaching halfway distance here in the Mencap London Endurance Challenge on Glacier TV, presented by Mencap, the voice for learning disabilities. Will Vincent, Doyle Johnson in the booth, and Doyle, this has been, even though there's not many drivers, even though there's been incidents on the track, this is a really interesting race.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. It's been great. To call the race, but I'm sure it's great for the fans out there because, there's a lot going on, a lot of passing, a lot of, lap traffic, there's a lot of excitement going on, a little bit of rubbing and, people in the walls and like we talked about, there's only 1 car right now on the lead lap, and that is your leader. But that's okay. I mean, you can still be 2 laps down and called in 5th place. So I'm pretty excited about this race. I'm glad that you chose this particular configuration because it's rather exciting compared to some of the other road courses that we've seen.
And the field really have been split on this, haven't they? Half the drivers say this is an awesome idea for a race. The other half of the drivers are like, what evil sadistic, I can't say the next word, chose this layout. But it has produced some great racing. Passing opportunities are possible, but they're difficult. And you don't get positions on a plate here, and that's just because there are some big braking zones here, but the cambers, the topography changes as it just really blends itself into some good racing. Carson Borchers, however, he really is hunting that race win at the moment, and however, Daniel Lee over Mark Warmington. Could Daniel Lee get 2nd position? His last lap at 39.3. Mark Warmington's last lap at 41.69. So Mark Warmington struggled on that last lap as he comes across the line again. The 41.4. Has Mark Warmington's tyres gone off this early in the run? Could this allow Daniel Lee to close down the gap a little bit? Having a look at Mark Warmington in that number 17 Blue Flag Racing machine, he really does look as though at the moment he's struggling, as his last couple of laps really have been off the pace.
Well, and that depends on what you call the pace too, because to Daniel Lee and Carson Borchers, the pace is something completely different to most of the other racers on the track.
And Mark Warmington, he comes through Clark Corner now to complete lap number 81 on the racetrack. His last lap there, back into 40.4s, but Daniel Lee behind him, he is still closing at a rate of a second a lap to Mark Warmington in that number 17 machine as he comes up to put another lap on Randy Crosnow as he come down into Druids. Randy Crosnow runs wide. Daniel Lee almost ran wide with him there, and that was a case of almost synchronized crashing. Carson Borchers out front, he can pretty much ease off for the moment. He's doing 39.4s, but he's in the lead of this race and dominating at the moment. Mark Warmington currently sat in 2nd position, Daniel Lee in 3rd, Jarno Metakainen in 4th, UC Nimmerman in 5th, Giorgio Ponti in 6th, David Ward in 7th, Randy Crosnow in 8th, Dave Dinks in 9th. He's running out your top 10.
Yeah, and Randy Crosnow, again, 8th position, still on the track in 83 laps on this very difficult road course as far as all the traffic and lots of booby traps as far as the other drivers are concerned. So Randy's having a really good race. I'm sure he's not disappointed today on his performance.
Yeah, Randy Crosnow, as we are halfway into the race, yes, he scored 3 laps down, but as you were saying, this isn't a case of necessarily talking about laps down, because such a small racetrack. Let's not forget, this track is only 1.2 miles long, and it's very, very fast. So you're not often racing, you know, the entire field. You're racing one, maybe two drivers at a time. And for you to put this into perspective, if this was a track like Spa-Francorchamps, Road America, you know, he would still be on the lead lap.
Oh, absolutely. It's just the size of the track, and anytime you get a track that's this small, that, I mean, you could be on the podium and still be 4 laps down. So being on the lead lap or how close you are to the lead lap really has no bearing on your position in the race in this particular situation.
Carson Borch is out front, however. He is not relinquishing anything. His last lap of 39.681 in that number 77 Lurpak car, coming through into Surtees. McLaren, Clearway, not just naming names, these are actually route corners. No such thing as a carousel here at Brands Hatch, unfortunately. Let's go back a little bit to have a look at David Ward. He's managed to get himself back up into the 7th position. He is closing down Giorgio Ponti at a rate of about 0.8 of a second of a lap. You can see him just in the distance now. He should be with him in the next 10 laps or so. And for David Ward, he really wants to try and get himself back into terms in this race.
Yeah,
sorry, Mark Warmington, pit lane.
Okay. David's really had a tough time. He's been up and back down again a couple times.
Mark Warmington, he is in for his second stop of the race. He's shown with 85 laps scored complete, coming out of pit lane there in the Blue Flag Racing number 17 machine. That will give, almost getting off the track there as he came out of pit lane, just hitting a bump. Very lucky there's no drivers around him as he comes now out of Paddock Hill bend down into Druids again. Also sliding there, waiting for the tyres to warm up, Mark, before you try and push that hard. He is going to be shown in the 3rd position. But he looks like he could go down another lap to Carson Borchers in this sequence of pit stops. For the moment, having a look at Jana Matikayan, I think he's going to still be shown in the 4th spot.
Yeah, that pit opportunity there, when Mark Warmington pits, that gives Daniel Lee, he scored now as you're in your 2nd position, and you talked about that. Could he come up there? So it's, again, an opportunity for Daniel Lee being 1 lap down, and we'll see how much longer he stays out for this particular pit sequence. So we've seen him on a kind of a short leash as far as pitting is concerned. So we'll see if he goes in the next couple of laps.
Yeah, Daniel Lee, he's looking to try and put a lap on Jana Matikayan and Randy Krosno as they come through Druid's corner. He gets past Randy Krosno, as does Jana Matikayan in the number 34 machine. So, Daniel Lee, remember the move that we saw him do earlier on Jana Matikayan in that number 34 Glacier Racing machine. It was just incredible out of turn number 1. Let's see whether or not he gets good drive off the corner and see if he can do something like that again. He is shown with 89 laps scored complete at the flag. David Ward, in the meantime, he is closing down on Giorgio Ponti in the 00 Sunny Spree TNT racing machine. Can Daniel Lee get any bit closer to Jana Matikayan as they come out of turn 1? He's going to have a look down into Druids. He's got the inside line, but that was close there. Matikayan just moving out of the way a little bit, and Daniel Lee, he's managed to get himself through, and the charge continues. Can he do the impossible and force Carson Borchers into a mistake?
Well, I don't know. I really don't think so. I think Carson Borchers a man of steel right now. He's out in front. I think he's running his race. I don't think he's really worried about who's behind him at all. I think he's more worried about getting through the lap traffic without crashing. But Daniel Lee's been pretty amazing. He's putting laps on these guys at an amazing pace.
David Ward is definitely closing in Giorgio Ponti. Not only can he see him in the distance, he can start seeing the details in that rear wing now of that 00 Santa Spree TNT racing machine. David Ward, as he comes across the lines, complete lap number 88. He did a 39.390 last time by. Giorgio Ponti, a 40.245. David Ward closing every lap. The gap is now down to just over 1 second as they come through Druid's corner. And Giorgio Ponti, he's been a very good defensive driver, but David Ward just got so much speed at the moment, and I think he is another one of those drivers who's just on a mission as they come down the Cooper straightaway into Surtees. Now into McLaren, that right-hand flick, and then again into clearway. He just got a little bit wide though, did David Ward there, as he came out of clearway, out of Clark Corner. And I think that might have cost him the opportunity to make a move on this lap. Let's have a look, see what happens as they come through Paddock Hill Bend. Not quite close enough.
We've been here before. We've seen Giorgio Ponte with UC Niemann, and Giorgio Ponte seems to get kind of fall a little bit under pressure, start to make a few mistakes when people get right underneath his wing. So hopefully he can hold it together here, and we'll see what happens.
David Ward last time, he slowed to a 40.066. So he lost himself about 0.6 of a second that last lap, coming through clearway again into Clark Corner. He's trying to look down to the inside line. Can he get the run as they come down past the start finish? And I think Giorgio Ponte doing a good job defending though, but is it just a matter of time as he comes through Graham Hill Bend? David Ward, I think, is trying to get a bit conservatively at the moment. He backed out the throttle really, really early into turn number 1. And what that does, however, is that loses him momentum to try and make a pass into Druids.
Well, and I think he might be leery of getting, because like I say, David Ward has been up and back down and up and back down. He's had a couple of incidents here today, so he may be real leery about making sure when he does have a pass, it's nice and clean and he's not taking damage to his race car.
Oh yeah, completely agreed. Whilst he wants to get himself up into this race as quickly as possible, you know, get himself back into position to charge down, drives. So close there between himself and Giorgio Ponte as he came down past the start finish line just there. You saw him look to the inside, had to flip back to the outside to get the line through, and he's just trying to make another move through Druids, doesn't quite close enough to do so. Can he keep that momentum now as they come through Graham Hill Bend, turn number 3, getting a good drive off the corner? But I think that if he can line himself up now through clearway, through the Clark Corner, I think this is going to be his best chance in a long time. They're currently working lap number 92. That's going to be shown complete any second now. Down to the inside comes David Ward. Looks like he's running a lot more wing though. He can't get the job done into turn number 1.
Well, and I also think if you look at the two different drivers, I think Giorgio Ponte's kind of hanging on the ragged edge there as far as his driving, and I think David Ward is just kind of not on the edge. Just waiting for Giorgio to give him, open up a nice big hole. He's assuming it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen within the next lap or so, I think you're going to see David Ward force the issue.
Yeah, David Ward, he's lost himself a couple of seconds in those last couple of laps. Again, he's getting a good drive off the corner. This could be the opportunity. He's a lot closer now. Trying to hold that inside line as they come down. Too wide down the start finish line. Is he going to get the job done? Oh, Giorgio Ponte, he goes wide.
Moving off the track. This is what we talked about. Giorgio Ponte having a lot of battle with nerves when he's got cars right by him. He's not able to kind of keep it together, and that's a shame. He's run some really good races.
I think for Ponte there in that 00 machine, I think he just anticipated where the asphalt would kick in about 5 meters too early, and that's what caused him to go into the gravel trap. There's a little point where you can dart wide and then get a nice wide arc into the corner. It looks as though that's what he was trying to do there. But he just caught the grass a little bit too early. That got him a bit sideways. He brushed the wall a little bit there into the gravel trap, and that's going to be a bit disappointing for Ponte, but he's able to carry on driving his race car, slow that lap. He's lost a lap now to Mark Warmington, struggling as they come through turn number 1. I think for Ponte now, as we saw UC Niemann early in the race, it is a case of surviving to the next pit stop.
Yeah, and we've seen that be a viable strategy before. I mean, he raced all he had, but I think at this point in time, hey, you know, Giorgio Ponte, just drive your race, keep the car on the track, keep it clean, keep the shiny side up, and you'll end up with a good finish.
Definitely struggling. I'm having a look at him now as he comes out of clearways. Is he going to dive down his pit lane? He does this time by. So with 95 laps scored complete for him, down into pit lane. 45 miles an hour the speed limit here. Be very careful what to go over that, otherwise you will get yourself a stop and go penalty. But Ponte, he's going to get himself some fresh rubber, get himself a little bit of fresh front wing and some Sunoco race gas. In the lead battle, however, Daniel Lee is closing, but there's just not enough laps.
Yeah, he's got a long road to hoe there. That, you know, because Carson Borchers is still running a great, smooth race. He's not making mistakes. He's really keeping control of his race car. And Daniel Lee the same way. If you look at the way he's driving, he's a really consistent driver on this track.
The gap between them is about 49 seconds on the racetrack. Now, I'm doing my maths incredibly quickly, and if he was to gain half a second a lap, you can just about do it with about 10 laps to go, catch up to Carson Borchers. But he needs lap traffic to go his way. He needs to keep on hitting his lines. He needs to hope that his tyres don't, start grading, as we saw with Mark Warmington in that number 17 machine a bit earlier on. He needs Carson Borchers to perhaps make a couple of mistakes and crack the pressure a little bit. But he really is. I mean, last time by 38.993, so he comes across the line again to complete lap 99, 39.265. Carson Borchers' last lap was a 39.3, so that time it looked as though these two are evenly matched. So it really is who gets luckiest through the traffic, who can keep that momentum. We've talked about it all day long, who can keep that momentum through this race. And I think for the moment it is really game on.
Yeah, and I think Daniel Lee's definitely got a faster lap time when he's on. The problem that's going to happen is almost everything he gains when he gets up there can be lost by trying to get around lap traffic for 2 laps. So it's kind of move forward and then kind of move back a little bit, move forward, move back a little bit. And the same thing's happening up front to Carson Borchers. So, and also remember too that Daniel Lee pitted, I believe, 4 laps before Carson Borchers. So you still have that pit strategy that's playing into that.
Yeah, so drivers are all pretty much going to have to make at least one more pit stop. For Daniel Lee, he's doing a great job, 39.2 last time by, trying to close that gap to Carson Borchers. I mean, yes, it is showing 1 lap down, but that gap between them is kind of about that 48, 49 second range. And all it's going to take is a bit of pressure on Carson Borchers, perhaps messing up in pit lane or something. Let's not forget that Daniel Lee is down here 50 seconds behind the race lead because he was involved in an incident with David Ward around the midway point of this race, which put him out of contention. But he's driving his way back into this race, and he's doing a good job of doing so. To update you on the rest of the field, Mark Warmington, he is currently sat in the 3rd position, doing pretty much a solid job at the moment. His lap times have picked up after his pit stop, back into the 39.5 to the 39.7 range after really falling off at the end of that last stint. And then in the 4th position, Jarno Matikainen, he is in the number 34 machine. His last lap of 41.238. So his pace has dropped off a little bit recently. Perhaps he made a couple of bad changes in his pit stop, which have kind of gone against him for the moment. In 5th spot, Jussi Linnemann, we talked about him having to drive a damaged race car for his first stint. He's back up into the 5th position, but David Ward closing him down. The gap between those 2 drivers is about 7-8 seconds at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to see the bulk of the racing here. I think going forward is going to be the positions, probably 4 through 6. David Ward trying to make that charge, getting through Jussi, and then trying to get up to Jarno. So it's we'll see what happens with that. But there's going to be the bulk of the racing. The rest of them, Carson Borchers, Daniel Lee, Mark Warmington. Now it's about, does the guy in front of me make a mistake, and do I make any mistakes? Otherwise, you're going to see 1, 2, 3 on the podium. But that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think that David Ward, he has the opportunity to close down Jussi Linnemann. That's pretty much possible. He has the opportunity to close down Jarno Matikainen. That's possible. Can he close down Mark Warmington in time? I'm not quite sure that is doable, because Mark Warmington, he's coming into turn number 2 now. David Ward, he literally is only about 15 seconds ahead on the racetrack. So let's reverse that. He's 25 seconds behind Mark Warmington, and those 2 drivers are lapping pretty much identically at the moment.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we talked about. It's really a matter of David Ward trying to get up to that 4th position, and you never know. Mark Warmington could make a mistake. Daniel Lee can make a mistake. So anything could happen. But if all things staying the way they are right now, I think David Ward is really trying to get up and find himself into that 4th position, even though that's not a podium spot.
So let's reset it for you with 107 laps scored complete here at the Mencap London Endurance Challenge on Glacier TV. Carson Borchers, he is your race leader. The gap between himself and Daniel Lee, about 45 seconds on the racetrack. Daniel Lee currently sat in the second position after having a collision in the mid-portion of this race, which put him out of contention, and he is having to do the drive of his life to try and get back towards Carson Borchers in the number 77 machine. Mark Warmington, he's currently sat in the third position, with Jana Matikayan in fourth, Jason Nimmerman rounding out your top five, and David Ward in sixth, Giorgio Ponti in seventh, Randy Posner in eighth, Dave Johnson ninth, Ease Warner in 10th. And let's not forget, this race is presented to you by MenCap, the voice for learning disabilities. If you'd like to make a donation to MenCap, you can do so by going to mencap.org.uk.
Yeah, and as the race goes on here, I'm kind of riding along here with Carson Borchers, and I'm really, really impressed with the race that he's running today. I mean, we've seen him in the past, and he's been a good, solid racer, but today he's like a whole new man. I mean, his lap times are, a little bit off there when he gets into the lap traffic, but he's running a very, very smooth and solid race today. So, hats off to Carson Borchers. Even if something went horribly wrong at this moment in time, he's been dominating for most of the race. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I think Carson, even though on paper he's not the fastest race driver on the racetrack, he's the driver who's made the fewest mistakes, and that really is showing at the moment.
That brings Daniel Lee into pits.
So yeah, Daniel Lee in the number one car. This could be his final. Yeah, in fact, this is going to be his final pit stop now. Coming into pit lane with 109 laps scored complete for him. He is obviously 1 lap behind the race lead, but Daniel Lee in the number one car, getting himself some fresh tyres, getting himself some fresh fuel. This is going to be the last time that he wants to come into pit lane. Let's not forget, I think this is his 5th pit stop.
It's a 4th or 5th, yeah. He's pitted at least one more time than most of the racers on the track.
Yeah, it's his 5th time, I believe, down into pit lane, unless I'm very much mistaken. We'll get our technical expert, Yoni Backman, to have a look at that when he gets the opportunity. He is back out on the racetrack. He's got himself some fresh tyres. Can he use this to his advantage? Can he put some really big laps down now? As I think that he's got a long shot, but you never count anything out in the Osprey Indycar Series. Let's not forget that.
And Carson Borchers is obviously capitalizing on the fact that he's going to be able to stay out on the track a little longer. We'll see a few pits here. Nope, he continues to drive, just like the last 2 pit stops, and so he's going to continue to try to capitalize on the fact that he's on a slightly different pit strategy than Daniel Lee.
Yeah, last time it was a 4-lap difference between Daniel Lee coming to pit lane, Carson Borchers coming to pit lane. So that means that we expect Carson Borchers to come in within the next 6 or 7 laps or so maximum. But Carson Borchers on the 77 machine doing a sterling job as your race leader. Currently working lap 112 of 165 here at the MenCap London Endurance Challenge on Glacier TV. Round 10 of the Osprey IndyCar Series of Will Vincent and Doyle Johnson in the booth. And as he coming down into pit lane now, the 77 machine is into pit lane, down to the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. Be careful, you don't want to get yourself a speeding penalty now. Let's have a look to see how good his pit stop is.
Yeah, and I think maybe he wanted to pit early and just get it over with, get back out there on the track, since his closest competitor is already pitted. So, like he's got his tires and his fuel. There he goes.
Out he comes. Be careful, don't cross that line too early. Got to be very careful when you blend. This is what got Daniel Lee a black flag earlier on when he crossed the blending line a little bit too early. No issues there for Carson Borchers. In fact, he's also 3/10 of a second quicker in pit lane, but that could be because of the fact that he had more fuel coming into this stint, had to take less fuel because he came in later. Good pit stop there by Carson Borchers.
Absolutely, and Carson Borchers continues to run a great race, continuing to dominate so far today, and it's kind of, like I say, it's nice to see kind of an underdog, but really running an excellent race today. I bet his team and his pit crew they're standing in there. I bet you they're just cheering, and they're celebrating wall to wall.
And just to update you, I've had a look back, and it is the 5th time Daniel Lee came down the pit lane. He came down first of all on lap number 14 We still got to find out what the issue with that one was. He then came down for his first scheduled pit stop on lap 56. Then he had the on lap 53. Then he had the issue on lap 56 with David Ward, which forced him to come down into pit lane again. Then he had the black flag on lap 57. Then he pitted on lap 108. But he is still only, in fact, he's closed. He's only about 40 seconds out behind the race leader.
Well, that's kind of interesting because I'm right along with Daniel Lee, and I'm sitting there watching Carson Borcher. So Daniel Lee's actually going to try to get his lap back on the racetrack. Again, that just shows you how far ahead Carson Borchers is.
But we've talked about the fact Daniel Lee's had 5 pit stops. Could you imagine how far ahead Daniel Lee could have been if he didn't have that incident with David Ward, which forced him to come down pit lane once? That lost him 20 seconds. If he had to come down to serve his penalty, that cost him another 20 seconds. So Daniel Lee, he could have been right there fighting for the lead already had it not been for this incident. And Carson Borchers is moving out of the way there. He's like, yep, you can have your lap back, but you've got to catch me now at a second a lap if you want to get the win.
Yeah, I know. I think that was a smart move by Carson Borchers. Hey, I don't want you on my rear wing painting the back of me and causing me to make a mistake. So I'm just going to go ahead and let you go by, and I'm going to run my race.
Last time by, Daniel Lee, a 38.820, setting fastest lap after fastest lap at the moment. His last 5 laps, a 38.9, 39.0, 38.8, 38.9, 38.8. Daniel Lee is charging in that number 1 machine, and let's have a look as he comes across the line. 38.9. Meanwhile, Carson Borchers, a 41.2 last time by, but before that, a 39.5 and 39.6. Daniel Lee needs 7/10 of a second a lap, and at the moment, he's just about doing it.
Well, and you got to remember, too, coming out of the pits, that's when you're on the new tire model that we have here. We haven't really talked about that much, but on these new tires, unlike what we had before, the most grip you're going to have is the minute you come out of that pit, your tires are as grippy as they're going to get. So for the first couple of laps, so I'm expecting those lap times to go up. But Daniel Lee is driving this car for everything it's worth right now.
In fact, there's 2 little things that just come into my head. First of all is, at what point will Carson Borchers really start sweating in that number 77 Lurpak machine? The second thing is, now Daniel Lee's ahead of Carson Borchers, Daniel Lee's going to be the first one. He's going to have to go through this lap traffic. Will that be an advantage to Lee, or will it be an advantage to Borchers, as once they've gone past one of them, Borchers is just going to be able to breeze past?
Yeah, I think Daniel Lee is, I think Carson Borchers really isn't going to be sweating until he sees Daniel Lee in his rearview mirror one more time, because you got to remember, it's Carson Borchers doesn't have the pressure. It's everything is on Daniel Lee right now to drive the wheels off his car to try to make up that entire lap on the race course. There are no more pit windows. None of that's going to happen. So he's going to have to get through lap traffic probably 5 or 6 more times without any incidents, without any mistakes. And that's going to be very difficult to do, even for somebody as good as Daniel Lee.
Last time by, Carson Borchers was actually faster as Daniel Lee's having to get around the lap traffic of Giorgio Ponzi in the 00 machine. We'll have a look this time by. It's Carson Borchers' turn to overtake. Carson Borchers a 40.1, Daniel Lee a 39.2. They've got ahead of him Jussi Nimmerman on the racetrack, then Jana Metakayan, and then Randy Kozner. They're all going to be lapped in the next 10 laps or so. So Daniel Lee really has to put his head down and get the gaps to make the pass happen. Meanwhile, David Ward in number 69, he's back up into the 4th position. He's overtaken Jussi Nimmerman and Jana Metakayan. In that sequence of pit stops, Jana Metakayan overtakes Randy Kozner to put him a lap down on himself. David Ward, however, let's go back to have a look to see where he is in comparison to Mark Warmington. Mark Warmington, he's coming off of turn number 2. David Ward isn't even at the start-finish line yet. David Ward's last lap, however, 41.1. Mark Warmington, a 39.9. So I think that unless anything happens to Mark Warmington, he might have that 3rd spot saved, which would be great for Mark Warmington.
Yeah, Yeah, Mark Warmington's had some good performances, but he's had a little bit of disappointment in the prior weeks. But today he's running a solid race. So he's not in any danger of catching Daniel Lee. But right now it doesn't look like he's in any danger of being overtaken either. So I think he's just going to ride. He's going to run his laps. He's just going to drive the car and see if he can take it home.
Mark Warmington, I cannot believe this. He's blown his engine up. Mark Warmington, more drama. Into turn number 1, he just blows his engine up in the middle of the apex. I cannot believe this.
The curse of the announcer. Oh my gosh.
Don't ever say you're going to be safe on the racetrack. Mark Warmington has oh my God, I cannot believe that. In pretty much a safe 3rd position, just into turn number 1, Paddock Hill Ben just blew his engine on apex. Cannot understand what happened. Did he just shift a little bit too early? I mean, these cars, they don't have these cars, you can't really shift down too early, so it's a very rare occurrence to see an engine blow up. Really want to know what happened. Meanwhile, the gap between Carson Borges and Daniel Lee, we are getting it updated every lap. The last 3 laps, it's been 0.2 of a second, so at the moment Carson Borges is safe.
Oh boy, I'm just send down some flowers and a box of chocolates from Mark Warmington. What a tragic, unbelievable.
So Mark Warmington, he is getting himself a tow back to pit lane. Let's see whether or not he can get himself back out onto the racetrack. This moves David Ward up into the 3rd position. It's also going to move Houston Miniman. Oh, so close there, as Carson Borges is going around the outside of David Ward into turn number 1, Paddock Hill Ben. David Ward goes down 2 laps now from the race leader, but David Ward now up into the 3rd position. This is going to be a satisfying recovery for David Ward.
Absolutely. I mean, he's had some troubles, like I say, up and down. So he's just, his patience now, kind of relaxed, just running his race has brought him back up to the podium position. But again, what we just saw with Mark Warmington, we will not mention one thing about the fact that he should be okay in his 3rd position.
Just having a quick chat, seeing what happened with Mark Warmington's crew chief. Apparently, he had the warning lights flash on his engine earlier on, which was what forced him to come down pit lane. But it didn't seem as though that had repaired anything when he came down and made some checks, did whatever. He went back out onto the racetrack, and it was just the fact that I think he'd hit the bump on the exit of turn number 1 too many times, and just as he was shifting down. And let's not forget, the elevation change as you go through Paddock Hill Bend is so severe, it just looks like the engine kind of just kicked out on him. Yeah,
that's an unfortunate turn of events for Mark Warmington. Definitely hearts go out to him and his crew there, because he ran a great race today. To get himself back up in there in that 3rd position, and so that's kind of a heartbreaker for him. Mechanical failure.
And David Ward makes his last pit stop. He's now back down into the 4th position, and Jussi Nimmerman, he is back up into the 3rd spot. So it's all changing here on the racetrack. Jussi Nimmerman having a look to see whether he's already made his last pit stop. So the gap between himself and David Ward is having a look to see just where David Ward is. He is coming through the Grey Hill Bend just there. So David Ward kind of sat in the 4th position. Having to see where Jussi Nimmerman is. He is down, coming past the start-finish line. The gap between those, about 15 seconds on the racetrack. Let's see whether or not David Ward can catch Jussi Nimmerman. Last time by, Jussi's lap was a 39.932. David Ward, a 39.971. So these two very, very finely matched, as Carson Borges has now put David Ward 3 laps down. But the gap between Daniel Lee and Carson Borges, it's closed now. Daniel Lee's only 31.4 seconds behind. Also, 38.717 for Daniel Lee just a couple of laps ago. He really is charging.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. You see, Jussi Nimmerman has scored his 2 laps down, and David Ward is 3 laps down, along with Mark Warmington and Jarno Matikainen. So it's interesting how this is flopping around a little bit towards that, obviously from 2nd or 3rd position on down. So the race, I don't think, is over for anybody out here. And And as you mentioned, Daniel Lee is definitely unbelievable out there on the racetrack right now, just throwing down some flying lap times.
He did, however, lose himself 0.3 of a second that last lap. So Daniel Lee charging perhaps a little bit too hard. If you look at his rear wing, you can see the sign running on empty. Perhaps that is what Daniel Lee is doing. He's putting everything into his car at the moment to try and close down Carson Borchers in the number 77 machine. The gap between Jussi Nurman and David Ward isn't as big as it looks on your timing and scoring machine. Jussi Nurman, he's coming down past the start-finish line now, and David Ward, the gap between them is only about 6 seconds.
Well, it also looks like the pit crew for Mark Wormington managed to figure out what was wrong with that engine. Maybe something just broke loose there, like you were talking about, and they were able to get the engine back fired up and get him back on the track. So Mark Wormington scored 3 laps down with Jarno and David Ward, so he's still in the race.
Yeah, but I'm sure that Mark Wormington's going to have to be very, very careful through that turn number 1 bump again. And we haven't really talked about that bump in turn number 1, but I've seen a couple of drivers hit it. Just right there, as he goes wide, Mark Wormington, just a little bit, keeps it on the racetrack. But it's just on the exit of turn number 1, as the car decompresses down onto the racetrack. There's a tiny little bump there, as you see Mark Wormington letting Daniel Lee go past him on the right-hand side there. I'll tell you what, it's such a fascinating battle between Daniel Lee and Carson Borchers. We're getting every lap the updates between the two of them. Last time by, it was about 3.5 tenths faster for Daniel Lee over Carson Borchers. The lap beforehand, 8 tenths of a second. We'll see what it is as they come across the line. Again, Daniel Lee set himself a 39.2. I think he's a bit slower that lap. Perhaps waiting to get around Mark Wormington. We'll have a look, see what Carson Borchers does. He's coming down past start-finish line now. 39.4, so Daniel Lee's still faster, but only by 2 tenths of a second.
Yeah, and I'm beginning to wonder if Carson Borchers just might be feeling the tickle of Daniel Lee back there a little bit, because he can definitely, his pit crew is telling him that the gap is only 30.2 seconds, but 30 seconds is quite a gap, and I don't think you're going to see him start to sweat until you start to see that get down to maybe around, 20, possibly even, 15.
Yeah, what the thing is, though, is I think for my watch, Daniel Lee needs 9 tenths of a second a lap, and he's just not getting that at the moment. Mark Wormington off again at turn number 1. His day continues to be bad at turn number 1, losing it on the apex of the corner by the look of it. Just the car switches ends, he gets himself a little bit too wide, gets one wheel on the grass, and I'll tell you what, though, Jarno Matikainen was very, very close to connecting him, but Jarno gets that 5th position. Mark Wormington is now down into the 6th spot.
And Mark Wormington might be underdriving the car now based on what happened to him in turn 1 there. So, that how that can kind of get into your head a little bit, where you know that there's something that caused a problem for you, so you intentionally avoid it, throwing your line and your rhythm all to heck.
So, to reset things one more time for you, we're going to have 133 laps scored complete in the Mencap London Endurance Challenge here at the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit. Carson Borchers is your race leader. Daniel Lee in 2nd position, trying to hunt him down. In the last 2 laps, he's managed to take another 1.1 seconds off that lead. But Carson Borchers hanging on for the moment. That is 28 seconds between those 2 drivers, with Jussi Nurman in 3rd, David Ward in 4th, and Jarno Matikainen running out your top 5. And don't forget, this race is brought to you by Mencap to raise money for the charity with learning disabilities. If you'd like to make a donation to Mencap, you can do so by going to mencap.org.uk. And all the fans here today are getting a great battle. One of those races that you don't get to see very often, which is one of those cat and mouse games. But Carson Borchers is doing his best to manage that gap out front.
He absolutely is. He's running a great race. Again, I can't say, how impressed I am with Carson Borchers. Once he got out in front, he's really managed his race car and managed the race. And just got a note coming in from the side from the racetrack that Randy Krosno also had an engine failure. He got towed into the pits, and his crew has managed to get his engine back started again. So we're seeing a lot. That's 2 for today.
Yeah, we don't normally see engine failures. As I was saying earlier, it's not like most cars where you can shift down the gears, you know, go down too early and end up blowing it up. With this car, because of the gearbox, you can't really shift down until it's possible to do so without blowing up your engine. But if you shift down, especially coming through turn number 1, if you shift down too early, just as you're going downhill, you can just pull the revs up a little bit too high, above that 10,300 mark. If you get it into 10,400, you really do run the risk of perhaps blowing that engine up. And it seems as though Randy Cosner and Mark Warrington both having troubles with that. But let's not forget that number 4 machine's still on the racetrack, so he's not being able to tell us how disappointed he is.
I'm sure he was disappointed with the engine failure, but he's a happy camper right now that we are 137 laps in and Randy Crosno is still on the racetrack. So kudos to Randy on that one. And we really like to have him in the booth, but we'd rather see him on the racetrack.
In the last 10 laps, Daniel Lee has taken about 10 seconds off Carson Borchers. We have got ourselves less than 30 laps to go here at the London Mencap Endurance Challenge. Can Daniel Lee do the impossible? Can he close that gap down to Carson Borchers? And let's not forget, if he gets there, can he make the pass happen? This is going to be one interesting end to this race. Meanwhile, David Ward, he has caught UC Ninderman. The gap between these two drivers, less than 1.5 seconds as they're going through Druids at the moment, just coming out of Druids. I think that David Ward really wants to get that third position back after what has been a tough race for him, as UC Ninderman running all the way out there, literally as far as he can go to off that curb, off turn number 1. And I think David Ward is trying his best to close him down. But we've seen passing is difficult here, but we've seen David Ward do some spectacular overtaking manoeuvres, as we've seen with Daniel Lee, Carson Borchers, pretty much the entire field, let's be frank.
Yeah, and David Ward being much more conservative on his passing opportunities than he was earlier in the race. A little less aggressive, but because of that, he's now battling for that last podium spot. And I have no doubt that UC Neiman will try to hold him off as long as he can. But David, going a little wide there. David Ward is definitely going to, I believe, he's going to make the pass at some point in time if he can keep himself together and just wait. This looks like a battle between Giorgio Ponte and David Ward that we saw earlier.
Yeah, Jason Ninderman is starting to show a couple of cracks on that number 8 team sheet. And let's not forget that we are 140 laps pretty much into this race now. In fact, 140 laps an hour scored complete. And this has been a very long, tough race for these drivers. We've done 1 hour, 30 minutes plus of racing here at Brands Hatch. And these drivers must be starting to feel a little bit of fatigue in this race cars. And as I said earlier, David Ward, having raced here in real life, this could be his advantage in the latter stages to try and get that third position back from GC Nimmerman. But let's not take anything away from that great steam machine. He's done a great job holding on to that third position through the sequence of pit stops as he's coming through the last couple of corners into Clearway again, then into Clark Bend, getting himself a little bit sideways yet again. That could allow David Ward to close back up. If David Ward can get a good run through turn number 1, he has the opportunity to try and make the pass down into Druids. And we're thinking now by our watch that Carson Borchers, barring any mistakes, is safe.
Well, we said that about Mark Warmington too, so and again, it's barring any mistakes and it's barring any other which we've seen before. We've seen some really interesting late developments in the race course. So Carson Borchers just needs to run his race, stay calm, and keep his lines consistent, and I think it'd be a great day for him to see him and his team to take the checkered flag today.
So David Ward looking on board with him now in the number 69 machine, trying to get closer and closer to Houston. In fact, I think he's just playing mind games at the moment. He was going to go all the way down to that inside line, but he was nowhere near close enough to make a pass. We're just trying to throw him off balance a little bit, so come down into Druids again and makes that left turn out into Graham Hill Bend any moment now. David Ward is trying his best to find a way past. He knows how difficult it is to overtake at Brands Hatch, but he's doing a good job of putting the pressure on, but not managing to find a way past just yet.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to get inside the head of UC Neiman, just like he did with Giorgio Ponte. Just kind of, here I am, kind of making him nervous because getting him to drive in his rearview mirror, you know, eventually he's hoping he'll make that big mistake and he'll just be able to slide on by.
Yeah, just how close does Jason Newman get to that gravel trap though? We saw Mark Warmington completely lose it earlier on, as here comes David Ward. He's oh so close coming out of Druids, but didn't get the momentum off the corner there on that inside line. That allowed a little bit of breathing space for GC Nimmerman, but we saw Mark Warmington, you know, just lose the car a little bit earlier on, coming out of Paddock Hill Bend, and I think that's what David Ward was trying to do, just push him, you know, a couple of inches further and further to that left-hand side, knowing if he gets onto the gravel, he's got the chance to make the pass.
Kind of putting the pressure on him, hanging him outside, so kind of almost followed him off the track there. But yeah, David Ward, I think you're correct. He's just trying to get in his head, kind of push him further off the track without actually touching him.
Looks as though for the moment either Daniel Lee's tyres have started to go off or he's given up the chase. The gap is not closing as dramatically as it has been previously. Carson Borchers, as he comes across the line, let's see what the gap is between those two drivers now. It's about 25 seconds. Definitely not doable unless Carson Borchers has a moment on the racetrack. But Daniel Lee, it looks as though he's really pushed a lot in the early stages of this stint, and maybe his tyres are just slowly starting to go off as he's about a couple of tenths slower per lap as he was earlier on in this stint.
And I think it's a lot going on here. Usually Newman seems to be holding off David Ward, and I'm surprised that David isn't being more aggressive right here, knowing the difference between fourth and third is a trip to the champagne bottle. So it'd be interesting to see if he gets a little more aggressive as the laps tick off.
And let's not forget battle for the 5th and 6th position. That is still going on as well. We haven't talked about it much, but Jarno Matikainen is under attack from Mark Warmington. Mark Warmington lost that position to Matikainen about 20 laps ago when he went off at Paddock Hill Bend, turn number 1. And ever since then, he really has been trying to get himself back into contention to make the pass for what will be 5th position on the racetrack. Jarno, his first race in the Afterburn Indycar Series, currently running in the 5th spot. Doing a good job, but under severe pressure from Mark Warmington at the moment. And David Ward, for the moment, he didn't go down to the inside line there. Maybe he's trying a different tactic, but he just dives down to the inside and dives back out. Again, very, very wide there for UC Nuremberg. Really running on the ragged edge, and David Ward gets such a good drive through Druids. If he can force UC Nuremberg into a mistake in turn number 1, he's definitely got the opportunity to make the move into Druids. I think, however, though, it has been some great defensive driving from GC Nuremberg on the 82 machine. Meanwhile, out front, the gap between Carson Borchers and Daniel Lee, 24.7 seconds as they came across the line last time by. So Daniel Lee, it does look as though he's not going to be able to close down Carson Borchers, but we've still got two tremendous battles on the racetrack. Battle for 3rd position, UC Nuremberg in the number 82 machine, David Ward in the number 69 pink car, and then the battle for, so close again, battle for 5th and 6th position, Jarno Matikainen in the number 34 machine, with Mark Warmington in the 17, literally second between both these pairs of drivers. Meanwhile, Giorgio Ponte and Randy Cosno, even though they're not battling for position per se, they look as though they're going to have themselves a little tete-a-tete as well. So, action still all the way across this racetrack.
And Mark Warmington really putting some pressure on Jarno Matikainen, so we'll see whether Mark can get behind here. It's definitely pushing here.
And a bit of interesting development in the battle for the 3rd position. UC Nuremberg, David Ward, they are coming up to lap. First of all, Giorgio Ponte in the 00 San Escuria TNT racing machine, and then they've got Randy Cosno ahead of them as well. UC Nuremberg very slowly to try to get past the 00. Will David Ward be able to get past as well? Yes, he does. He looks a lot closer as they're coming to clearways this time by. Can he get a good drive off the corner? Can he try and set up that move into turn number 1? Doesn't look as though he's going to be close enough unless he tries something really, really radical. But David Ward down to the inside line again, trying to force UC into mistake. He's closer, but too early on the brakes. Just a little bit too early on the brakes there for David Ward. But again, they've got Randy Cosno ahead of him. This could be interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Justin Inman wasn't going to fall for that like Tremonti, kind of lose track of where the pavement ends that time. So Houston Inman had definitely had control of where that car was on the outside line.
And around the corner, it looks like they're going to catch him at a very opportune time. And there, it's going to be very close. This could give David Ward the opportunity, but they've got the lap car of Randy Cosno ahead of him. Don't go 3 wide, guys. David Ward now, can he get down to the inside line? There's going to be 2 wide into turn number 1. Who's going to be the last late breakers? David Ward does it just, but he's going to have to run the inside line down into Druids.
Oh. Nice pass.
That was set up perfectly there. As they both flapped Randy Cosno, just getting himself down the inside into Paddock Hill Bend. Had to get off the throttle a little bit too much, and side by side all the way down into Druids, but a great pass there. That moves David Ward back into the 3rd position. But Houston Inman, I'll tell you what, he will not be disappointed with this 4th position, because he has driven himself a sterling race, and let's see whether or not he's got anything to try and re-attack David Ward with.
He's certainly not giving up.
No, definitely not. But in the battle for the 5th and the 6th position, Mark Wilmington's lost himself a couple of seconds to Jarno Metakainen. So he's going to have to get himself back into the hunt. And we have got ourselves less than 15 laps here of the Mencat London Endurance Challenge on Glacier TV. I am Will Vincent. That guy over there is Doyle Johnson. And this has been an interesting race. And we always talk about the last 15 laps of after the Indycar Series races being chaotic. What could happen in this race?
Well, it's definitely chaotic in here. Carson Borchers, though, you can't say enough about that. He's run a stellar race today. And he's up front, looking good, still looking smooth, turning some really good lap times for this late in the race. So, once again, I have to give him the Car of the Race award. Usually I wouldn't do that for the leader, but he's done such a phenomenal job today.
Oh yeah, Carson Borchers, yes, he qualified in the 2nd position. Yes, Daniel Lee behind him has had incidents, but to be leading this race for as long as he has, and having to deal with all the pressure, getting around the lap traffic on this racetrack, he won this race getting through lap traffic. While other drivers behind him have had incidents, find it difficult, lost time behind drivers. Carson Borchers is just being sublime in getting his way through traffic, keeping his head down, using that magical M word of momentum. He definitely has had the drive of his life in the Afterburn IndyCar Series as he comes across the line, this time by 10 laps to go.
Yeah, last couple of weeks, so Will, this being a charity race and all for a good cause, but the last couple of weeks, I do have to say, the Afterburn IndyCar Series has put up some of the best racing I've seen in a long time in a sim racing series. So, I think everybody needs to take some serious notes that all the drivers, not just the ones up at the top, but all the drivers are putting in a great performance, putting in a lot of work, and they're driving really hard. We've seen a lot of action, a lot of trading places, and a lot of hard charging. So this has absolutely been one of the best series I've seen in a very long time, Will.
Well done, the checks in the post. Meanwhile, that battle for 5th and 6th position, Jarno Metakainen and Mark Wilmington. You talk about hard charging. Mark Wilmington is trying his best to get back to the rear of Jarno Metakainen in the number 34 machine. Last time by, a 39.3 for Mark Wilmington, a 39.3 for Jarno. 6/1000ths of a second faster than Jarno across the line last time by. Let's have a look, see what they do this time. Mark Wilmington lost himself about half a tenth that time. So the number 34 machine, the Glacier Racing car of Jarno Metakainen, looks as though he's keeping that 5th place under control for the moment. In the battle for the 3rd position, David Ward, he has managed to put himself, about half a second gap to Jussi Nurminen. As I tell you what, great drive by Jussi as well. We talk about drivers who put their all into the series. We need to look no further than the number 82 machine of Jussi Nurminen, doing himself a really good drive as well. He wasn't at any point blocking any other drivers, but he's making it difficult, just running his line, hitting his braking points perfectly, and I think he's done a great job. He should not be disappointed with that 4th place finish.
Oh, absolutely not. And we've seen good finishes out of, and some good racing out of UC before. I mean, this is, once again, what we're talking about in the Afterburn IndyCar series. A lot of great racing, especially on the road side. There's been some really good racing on the oval side, but I have to say that the roads part of this series, the road side of the series, has been really exciting this season, and hopefully that's going to continue.
Yeah, and next week we'll be back, same time, same place, at Alton Park for our second stop in England of the Afterburn IndyCar Series. This year, 58 laps of Alton Park circuit. That is going to be a very, very fast-paced race as well. Having a look still at that battle for third and fourth position, David Ward is gapping Jason Nimmerman about a tenth of a second a lap. But these three drivers, they're not under pressure really from Jarno Mätäkeinen behind them. They're just running their race. I mean, Jarno himself is about 15, 20 seconds behind that battle for the third position. But Mark Warrington, it looks as though his chances to get fifth have faded for the time being. He's dropped back now to about 2 seconds behind Jarno Mätäkeinen in the fifth spot, who I have to say is turning some very, very fast laps. These top five drivers at the moment, they are all within about half a second of each other turning laps on the racetrack, and it just seems to be who does the fastest lap. It's a different driver each lap at the moment.
Yeah, and when you look at Jarno, for example, he's running the Glacier racing car there, and he's normally working with Yoni as far as Glacier TV is concerned. So knowing Yoni like we do, I have no doubt that Jarno's probably having to run a camera at the same time he's running this race car. So he's probably at an extreme disadvantage at this point.
Running a camera, spotting, running two servers at the same time. Yeah, Jarno is having probably an interesting race. But again, with the limited practice time that Jarno Mätäkeinen has had in that number 34 machine, and let's not forget, he is not an IndyCar driver by trade. He drives other cars, so this is one of his first appearances in the IndyCar with the new tyre model, and to get himself a fifth spot, that is really good for him as well. In the meantime, however, Carson Borchers, he is dominating, and he's in, oh my god, he's into pit lane. He's blown his engine.
Oh my god, are you kidding me?
He's blown his engine. He can't cruise it down pit lane. He's going literally 31 miles an hour down pit lane. He might be able to get himself a... This is really hotting up here. I cannot believe this.
Gosh.
Daniel Lee, he's coming through the final corner now. We have got ourselves 3 laps to go. Carsten Borchers, I cannot believe this. We talk about this every single race. Something happens in the last couple of laps. Daniel Lee is back into the lead of this race with 3 laps to go.
That is insane. That's the third engine failure of the race, and our race leader, Carson Borchers, that's just unbelievable that has just happened to him.
Heartbreak for Carson Borchers in the number 77 machine after leading this race for oh so long, getting himself a humongous lead. Yes, Daniel Lee was able to close it down on the racetrack to just over 20 seconds, but I mean, he's led 148 laps here today, and it looks as though he's going to be credited with a second place finish. Daniel Lee with 1.5 laps to go in that number 1 main camp machine. He is coming now through Graham Hill Bend. Is there going to be any more twists and turns in this last 1.5 miles of this race? Daniel Lee, he's coming through clearaways now, and I'm sorry, I'm speechless still. Carson Borchers, he's got himself back out onto the racetrack. He is 11 seconds behind Daniel Lee. As this time by, the white flag is in air. Daniel Lee is going to be leading a couple more laps of this race, coming down into Paddock Hill Bend, holding it nicely over the curb. And as he comes under the car loop side into Druid's corner, he has literally got himself 4 corners left to go. Daniel Lee now coming down the straightaway into Graham Hill Bend. All he's got himself now is the Cooper straightaway, holding it nice over the curves there. He's going to flick it left into Surtees now, into clearways, turn number 5. He's only got himself 1 more corner to go. As Daniel Lee coming out of the final corner, he is going to win the Main Cap London Endurance Challenge, round 10 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series. We did not expect that 10 laps ago.
Absolutely not. That's a heartbreaker. Not to take anything away from Daniel Lee, because he ran an excellent race, fastest laps of the race, very consistent driver. But Carson Borchers, unbelievable, gets a second place finish due to a mechanical failure on the track, no fault of his own. Drove a great race, but it just wasn't to happen for him today.
Carson Borchers comes home in second position in the number 77 machine after leading 148 laps here today.
And congratulations to Daniel Lee. His pit crew was probably just jumping up and down, big party going on as soon as they heard that Carson Borchers had blown that engine or had engine failure. But oh my gosh, good job for Daniel Lee, and a heartbreaker for Carson Borchers.
David Ward, he comes home in the third position in the number 69 machine. UC Nimmerman, he comes home in the fourth position in that number 82 machine. Determined drive there by UC in the number 82 car. And then Yana Metakayan comes home in the fifth position with Mark Wilmington in sixth, Jorge Ponti in seventh. Randy Krosno, he finishes in the eighth spot. And then Dave Jinks in ninth, he's won a 10th. Justin Smithson 11th, Ryan Norton 12th, John Ailes in 13th.
Yeah, big shout out goes to Randy Krosno. Good job, buddy, for finishing the race. We would have loved to have you in the booth, but we'd rather have you finish the race on the track. So big shout out goes out to our buddy Randy.
And let's not forget that the one consolation Carson Borchers might have is that he was our driver of the race by a clear margin. And I think also he should be happy with the fact that he has got a couple of bonus points as well for leading the most laps.
Yeah, and you see him there congratulating Daniel Lee. Great sportsmanship from Carson Borchers. He doesn't seem to be excited. He knew it was just luck of the draw that he had engine trouble. So class act, good job all the way around.
So we're going to start our post-race interviews. Let's see if this works. Daniel Lee, coming into lap 160, you were going to be credited with second place. And then all of a sudden, you see some smoke, and all of a sudden, you're the leader again. Take us through that last part of the race.
Well, in actual fact, I didn't see any smoke whatsoever. Somebody else came on the chat and said, bloody hell, Carson's engine's blown. And I thought it was just having a laugh. But, man, it felt like all the bad luck and just general tripping over myself just came to completely turn around. I was gifted it. I think Carsten deserved it on sheer consistency, because I was all over the place. That was a mess.
And you were really, really fast at portions of this race. First of all, lap 14, you had a pit stop. Did you get some damage to your race car, or was it just an early pit stop for you?
Well, if you didn't see it, I basically sailed off and kissed the tyre wall pretty much dead on. And that was just before the pit entry. So if you missed it, it was about lap 14, 15, 16, and that was just the start of the trouble. Before that, I thought I had it in the bag. Clearly not.
And then you had your incident with David Ward about halfway through the race. Just looked as though there was enough room, and then there wasn't, just coming out of Graham Hill Bend.
Yeah, seemed to be alongside him. And then I saw him just scoot over just a little bit. I jerked to the left, and then we came together somehow. Just got tangled up. I haven't seen it yet, but nah, no hard feelings whatsoever, because we don't know whose fault that was, or at least I don't. I need to see it.
And then that last portion of the race, it looked at one point that you might have had the legs. You're closing anywhere from half a second to 8/10 of a second a lap, and then your tyres seem to have dropped off a little bit. How hard were you pushing those last 50 laps?
Well, I was absolutely gunning it, because I just thought, when I retook Carsten to unlap myself, it seemed as if he just let me by, and then he seemed to lose 4/10 per lap compared to me. It seemed as if he might have had aero damage, something like that. So I was absolutely gunning it. I was absolutely giving it the beans. So it was a good thing too, because if I hadn't have done that, I might have still came in second. So yeah, 100%.
And of course, this mustn't be your biggest achievement in the last couple of weeks after running the London Marathon a couple of weeks ago. First of all, congratulations to you on doing that and raising so much money for MenCap. But this must rate as one of your highest I-rating drives in quite a while.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely the most exciting. I mean, I've got 1 or 2 people watching, and I mean, they texted me during the race. I can't obviously read them, but I'd imagine that they're just going to say, "Epic! What was that? You bloody fool!" All sorts. So, brilliant race. Enjoyed it. Didn't give up. And I just got to thank you and Afterburn for hosting it, and cheers for everybody who turned up and had a race. It was pretty hectic.
Well, congratulations on your race win. We're going to have to be very, very quick. What we're going to do is very quickly talk to third place driver David Ward. David, interesting race for you. You managed to get your way back into third position. How was it? No, press the other button. There we are.
Yeah, it was a good race. I had a little incident with Daniel coming out of Graham Hill Bend. I've had a look at the replay. It didn't look like we gave each other enough room, but I was coming back off the track on off the runoff area. So yeah. Anyway, one of those things. Really enjoyed it. Managed to take third. So yeah, everyone's happy.
Well done. We're going to go through these really quickly. We'll just say now is that we'll get some more in-depth interviews done on our post-race show, which will be available to download from teamafterburn.com very soon. Jarno Metakainen, you came home in 5th position in your first ever Afterburn IndyCar Series race. Well done.
Well, I'm glad. Tough race.
It was, didn't have that much practice coming into this race, and it looks as though you're finding speed as the race progressed. Just how hard was that race for you?
Really hard. I didn't get a pace at the start at all, and made a couple of stupid mistakes.
And very, 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 very quickly, Mark Warmington, you had an interesting moment about 2/3 of the way through the race when your engine decided to go pop. Other button.
Other button.
Yeah, it said it was going to go, so I pitted. I wish I'd have stayed out now, because it meant I did 2 pit stops for the engine when and it lost me third. I'd have had you, David.
No way.
We'll talk more about that in the post-race show. Meanwhile, all I have to say for myself and Doyle is it's been an amazing race here today at Brands Hatch. Indy, Daniel Lee is your race leader by 12.5 seconds over Carson Borchers after what was once again a crazy last 5 laps in the Afterburn IndyCar Series. We'll be back next week at Alton Park for what will surely be another exciting race. Meanwhile, from myself, from Doyle, from Yoni, from everyone here at Glacier TV, good night.